We are Mike and Jeannie, and we restore old houses. In 2021, we moved to South Carolina and bought a 120-year-old Victorian house. Follow along as we put the polish back on this Victorian masterpiece.
Welcome back to 1834 Restoration House.
We're coming from our central hallway today. This is our grand staircase. Isn't that lovely? I just love how the woodwork just glows. Well, we have a busy day today. This huge box right here, this is a line set for the air conditioning system that we're going to put up in the attic, which will serve the upstairs. And I didn't expect it to be quite that big. That box is huge.
Yes, it is.
But let me show you some other things we've got going. This is a gas line, and we're going to run this up through a chimney chase so it won't be visible. And we'll use this to run the furnace. And of course, you have to have some electric power. So we have one for the AC, one for the furnace. And I can't believe how this stuff has become a hot commodity. They actually lock it up at the Home Depot now. You can't just walk up to the shelf and grab it. They have to come and unlock it for you.
It's crazy.
Very crazy. How did we get here?
Today's program is sponsored by the generous support of our patrons. Your support helps to further our historic preservation efforts. For more information, visit patreon.com/1834 Restoration House.
All right, first thing we need to do is make sure we have everything we need here. We have 12-2 width ground. That is 12 gauge wire. It's 50 feet long, which should be enough to get across from one side of the house to the other. And let's see, we need a circuit breaker. This one here is the larger of the two, so this is probably it. It's a 20 amp 2-pole breaker, which is sized correctly for that outdoor unit. And let's see, oh, yes, of course, the AC disconnect. This goes on the wall, and this is how the service technician, which is me for the most part, will walk up to the wall, grab a hold of this thing and yank on it, and that shuts down the power to the air conditioning unit. So we have to put that in as well. This is an air conditioning compressor, or more specifically, what they call a package unit, and it's used to heat and cool the house. Now, you may be thinking this is huge, but the only reason it's huge is because it has a furnace combined with an air conditioner all in one unit. So if this had been just an air conditioning unit, it probably would be about a third of the size or maybe a quarter of the size. So anyway, that's why it's so big. But United States electrical building codes require that each one of these has an outdoor disconnect unit, and that looks like this. So inside this box, there's a handle, and when you pull this handle out, it disconnects power to the unit, and that's done for servicing. So the air conditioning or heating guy can do his work without fear of getting electrocuted. Since we're planning on putting another unit here for the upstairs, it needs to have its own disconnect. So I went ahead and got one of these. My plan is to put this on the wall right next to the other one, probably right about here, maybe an inch away from it. I think they're exactly identical, come to think of it. Well, a couple years ago, we replaced the original one because it was really bad, and so we put a new one on here. Because we have a well-known path from this box back to the breaker panel, I'm going to go ahead and mount this other one right next to it, probably about an inch away. And I'm going to use the Sharpie pen and mark exactly where I want the mounting holes to be. So I'm going to set that up about an inch away and try to keep it as square as possible. I'll go ahead and make a mark there, and a mark here. And, you know, let's go ahead and do 4, just for the fun of it. All right, so I've got my 4 marks. And I have special screws that claim to be able to go into brick, wood, metal, or whatever. So I'm going to try that and see how well that works out. But in the meantime, I need to knock out one of these holes for the electrical. Oh, check that out. I've got raccoon prints all over the top of this thing. Now I'm going to just make a mark here. That's where my electrical is going to go through the bricks. I'm a little bit skeptical when they say that these screws can go into masonry. I think what they're talking about there is probably concrete, I'm not sure if that works on bricks, so I'm going to try it on this old brick here and see what happens. I just don't think it's going to work. Well, let's see. Kiln fired brick 1, screw 0. As we're getting on close to summer, it's a little bit humid out here, and that sunshine right there is making that humidity feel really uncomfortable. So it's hard to work over here in the sunshine, but if I step over here a couple of feet into the shade, that cool humidity and the shade feels so refreshing. Can you hear the cicadas in the background? Kind of a low, rumbly sound. They haven't really gotten going yet. These are the red-eye types, and they're really just kind of hanging out, kind of getting to know each other, I think. Now I have to drill a hole in this brick so I can get the wire through there. And I can't use just any old drill bit because it'll just rip it right up. So this is what's called a masonry bit. They require a hammer drill in order to do this. And so I have my hammer drill handy, and I have it set to not only rotate, but also to hammer at the same time. So it's spinning and hitting. And that guarantees that it gets through with a nice clean cut. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this on here where the electrical wire goes and start at it. Nice and easy. All right, there it is. A nice clean hole. This screw right here, which is painted blue, it's a special kind that's made for concrete and masonry. And in order to put this screw in, I have to drill a pilot hole. But before I do that, I have to get my special masonry pilot hole bit. Let's take the old one out. Drop the new one in. Snaps in like that. All right, let's go. Well, you can see how that made fast work of a tough job, so having the right tools can make all the difference between struggling versus getting it done. Hey, this is really cool. So we don't live very far away from the F-16 factory, and they were just doing a first flight for an F-16 a few minutes ago, and it kind of went boom. You could just hear it as they hit supersonic. It wasn't too bad, but normally when they first flight these things, they hit so hard and it just goes bang. It was like a big explosion went off right here. So I think they're taking them up higher now before they go supersonic. Unfortunately, we didn't have the camera going. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put this box up here and start it going. Have you ever watched one of those shows where everything goes perfectly and it gets done in 45 minutes? Well, this isn't one of them. Sometimes in spite of our best efforts, things don't work out quite like they're supposed to. And in this case, I drilled 4 holes for the screws. One of the holes turned out perfect. The other 3 turned out to be a little bit off kilter. And I think I wasn't holding the drill quite straight or something like that. And so the screws have nothing to bite into. Well, how do we fix that? I went down and got myself some 2-part epoxy. So what I like to do is just mix 50-50. I'll just take a popsicle stick and stir them together. And they should start to turn a gray color here in a moment. So it's kind of a dark gray. Now, I'll take my screws and I'm just going to soak the threads with this stuff and then push it in the hole. And I'll come back and I'll get my final coat here and just shove it in there. And take the screwdriver and lock it down. Okay, that's much better. So the screws will hold much better. And whenever the screws don't hold, the epoxy will lock into place. So we should be good to go. The disconnect is right over there. We need to run a wire under the house and come out over here where the circuit breaker panel is and then hook that up. Can you hear the cicadas now? It sounds like a dozen sirens off in the distance. I'd like to show you a little trick. Let's say you're going under a house and you're taking a light back there with you. And have you ever considered what might happen if you're back there in the dark and your power cord comes apart like that? Well, that's not very good and can be kind of scary if it's really dark in there. So let me show you a trick. Take your wires and cross them like that. Loop one under like so. Bring it up, put it in a knot, and then pull it together like that. Now, you can never pull that apart. When we bought this house, the crawl space door was in terrible condition. It literally was rotting and termites were having their way with it. So we took the whole thing out and we built a brand new one out of oak. And this door is about a year old now and doing really well. I'm really happy with the way it's working. Before I disappear into the darkness, I'd like to tell you what I'm up to. So I have this electric wire here. I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to pull it all the way across the house and just kind of thread it through where it needs to go. And then I'm going to push the other end through the outside there where the disconnect switch is. And hopefully we'll have a camera in place so you can see that happen. And then I'm going to come back and staple this up to the joists. You won't be able to see any of this though because I'll be back in the darkness and we can't take our cameras back in there because it's so dirty. It's days like this where I miss our old 1834 house up in New York that had a full deep basement because it was nice to go down there and just work. Here, I've got to go into the crawl space and crawl around in the dirt, in the dark, spider webs. Ugh. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get these wires all stripped up. I pulled the electrical cable all the way across the house, so the other end is laying down inside there behind that door. So the next thing I need to do is open up this electrical panel here. You know, this thing was new and shiny, and after a year it's starting to lose that shine. I wonder if I should wax it. So I'm going to take this off. This is a junction box here. I'll take this off so I can feed wires through. I've done a kind of an industrial construction method here where all my wires go into a big metal box, and then from the big metal box they come in through this big conduit here. But you see they don't have jackets on them. They don't need jackets because they're inside conduit. So once they hit that box, we lose the jacket, and then we can bring up just the wires themselves into the panel and make the connections there. If you've ever wondered what the inside of an electrical panel looks like, it looks like this. There's a whole bunch of bus bars, circuit breakers. Now, this panel is very new and we really haven't put much on it yet. Most of the electrical system on the house is still running through an old breaker panel which sits over here. And the parts that aren't over there are the old knob and tube wires, and they go somewhere else, but we won't talk about that today. So what we want to do is get another breaker in here and make that the air conditioning breaker. We built this system ourselves a couple of years ago, including the meter box, the breaker panel, that. The only thing we didn't do was do the underground trenching, and the utility came and did that for us. They were very kind to give us underground service after all these years. And they upgraded our system from, I think it was 60 amps up to 200 amps. So we now have lots of power to run anything that we need to run in this house. Now, I've tried really hard to keep this thing looking good. So these are our main power lines here. They come up, and they go in here, all nice and neat. And these are the lines that go from the breakers out to the circuits, what few of them we actually have hooked up. So while you listen to the church chimes, I'm going to go ahead and put this breaker in. There it is. The next thing I need to do is take out 2 more of these tabs right here. Okay, there we go. So now the circuit breaker can pop through the panel. I'd like to draw your attention to this window right here with that orange flag in it. This is not a commercial for Square D Electric, but they have 2 kinds of panels that you can use in your house. There's the Homeline panel, and that's like your basic Home Depot stuff. And then they have what's called QO. And QO is the much better system, in my opinion, and that's what we chose to put in here. The QO breakers have a flag on them. So if you pop a breaker, that flag comes on orange. So let's say it's a dark and stormy night, you popped a breaker, you come running out here in the dark and the driving rain and you want to find out which breaker is popped. All you have to do is open the door and look for the flag. Then you can throw the breaker back on and hopefully it comes back on, which sometimes it might not if there's an electrical problem. But you can quickly tell which one has tripped. With the Homeline system, you can't tell that because there's no flag. So anyway, that's my opinion, just saying. The only thing left to do now is bring the wire up through the conduit and connect it up to the breaker. The reason I put this here is so that I can very easily turn the wires and head them back up that way. So let's see if all the wires are cooperating today. Because a lot of times they don't. There's really gotten to be more wires in here than I expected there would be. And I think what we should do at some point is drop another conduit down here and double up the capacity, because we've got big wires in here, and by the time those get in, there isn't really room for the little wires. So let's see. Can we get that up through there? That was 50 feet of wire, and I know from experience that 50 feet will get me from there to here. And not much more. Well, I don't see it and I don't feel it. So where did it go? We are out here in the backyard. It's afternoon and the cicadas are just having a blast out here. Listen to this. You've got the low-tone cicadas back here. Then you've got the high-tone cicadas up above. In a normal year, the high-pitched buzzing, that's normally what you hear. But this back here, these are those new cicadas that come out every 17 years, the ones with the red boogie eyes. It almost sounds like a million frogs, like deep frogs out there in the back. So if that's as bad as it gets, I'm okay with that. It is evening time now. Today was really hot. So hot that a whole bunch of magnolia flowers popped open. That smell is intoxicating. Spring here in South Carolina in summer. Yeah, it's great. Now, on this side of the house, this is facing west. The sunshine in the afternoon is so intense, and I mean, it just blasts you. it's impossible to work out here. So we had to wait until the sun starts to head down behind the trees and it's cooled off a little bit. Where we left off here, I was trying to fish this wire through here and I couldn't quite get it because there's some kind of obstruction here. One of the problems is that when we first hooked this up, we took 3 very large wires and ran it down through here, back behind the brick wall, and came up to power up that box over there. And I'm starting to rethink that philosophy, and I'm thinking what we should do is put a conduit here outside and run it over to power that box and get those 3 heavy wires out of this conduit right here, because we really need the space for things that really matter. One of the problems with living in rural South Carolina is every time we need something, it's a 30-minute drive to the nearest town to get things. Well, this is called a fishing pole, and we had to drive 30 minutes to get it, and then we had to drive 30 minutes back, plus we had to stop for lunch. So that's about an hour and a half lost right there, and by the time we got back here, it was too hot to work. So let's get started. What I'm going to do is take this thing, and I'm going to push it down here, like that, being careful not to shock myself. And I just do like that, and it comes right out here. It's kind of hard to see because I've got green tape on a green fish. I just need several wraps, and I'm wrapping it really tight because I don't want the thing to slip out. That should be good. Cut that off, and I'll just make a tag right there so I can undo it quickly. Now I just have to pull it back through. I'll just push it in first to get it started. Now I want to make sure that this thing stays flat so it doesn't kink, right? Okay, I'm going to pull here and push from below. And there it is, all 3 wires. Now I've got to work this and keep it flat because right at the end is where they want to kink. Remember I told you that we had just enough wire to get the job done? Well, I wasn't kidding. This is the breaker we're going to, and that's how much wire we have left. So we always cut it close. The wires I was talking about that are in the way is this one, and this one. You can see how thick they are. And if I can get them out of this conduit, that's going to make a huge difference. But for tonight, let's go ahead and just feed this through. Being careful that I don't shock myself. And I'll do the same thing with all the others. Now this one here, right? This is bare wire. This one can easily touch something and cause a short circuit and a big bang and a spark. So this one I want to be super careful with. And let's see, this is, we want to go to the neutral bus bar, which is actually up here. Well, it would appear that I'm maybe an inch short. Well, okay, let's see what we can do about that. Well, fortunately, I left some slack down inside behind this wall here, and I was able to pull some of that back through. So let's go ahead and hook this one up first. This is our neutral. And that will go right in here. And now we have our 2 phases. And we have what looks to be just enough wire to get it done. So 50 feet. That's it. No more. So I'm going to go ahead and just tuck these in, tuck them in like that, make them look nice and neat. because a neat electrical box is a safe electrical box. All right, so there it is. The breaker is still off, where it will remain off until the time when we hook up air conditioning, so it may be off for a bit of time. And that takes care of all of the electrical for the air conditioning compressor for the upstairs. We need to get inside before the mosquitoes come out because they're already starting to fly around a little bit. We have a problem that keeps occurring that we need to address. We found out that the front porch and the front office and the kitchen are all on one breaker. And so what happens is we get two computers running in the office. Jeannie goes into the kitchen and cooks with something, and sometimes two somethings. And every time she turns on that second appliance, off it goes. So we need to go into the house at some point in the future and go ahead and hook up another circuit for that. We'll go ahead and separate those two. Well, we're back out here in the cool of the morning, and it's the best time to work because the sun is over there, the shade is over here, and it's feeling really nice. So I was kind of half joking yesterday when I said I might just wax that thing, but the more I think about it, I kind of like my stuff to look clean and nice, so let's do this. Wow, look at that color come back. Whoa, see all the gray paint coming off? That's how our cars used to be back in the old days. We'd have to wax them because the paint would get all chalky. All right, well, paste wax needs to dry, and it dries up to a haze. And once it's dried to a haze, we go back and buff it with a soft cloth. All right, there we go. Almost as good as new. I know it seems kind of silly to be waxing an electrical panel, but here's the thing. A coat of wax on any painted surface will make it last longer and help it shed rain. And so rather than having a derelict old looking thing in 20 years, maybe might not look too bad. This is the old breaker panel that was put in probably back in the 1960s, and it is rough. It does not meet modern codes at all, and it's pretty sketchy in a lot of ways, but it does function. And it's also more modern than the fuse box that we have in the house, so consider this a step up. Now, I'm looking in here, and I see right away there's a breaker that is turned on that has nothing on it. There's no circuit, so I'm going to go ahead and shut that off. Yeah, I've just disconnected this breaker from the line. All of the other breakers have something on them still, and I don't know what they are. But check this out. I was talking about not meeting code. So I've got a couple of circuits here that were added. They look like they were added fairly recently, and it wasn't done by me, by the way. But these Romexes, they come out of the box. They come out here. They're exposed to the open. Okay, that's a code violation right there, and not good. Anyway, because they're exposed to the atmosphere, sunlight, and they will deteriorate. Squirrels can chew on them. Who knows what could happen, but these are supposed to be inside of a conduit or otherwise, inside a wall or something like that. So these two need to be removed and replaced. And I've got a couple others here. This one here in particular scares me. This looks like cloth wrapped aluminum wire, and I have no idea where it goes, but man, does that look sketchy. Wow. You are looking into our circuit breaker panels right now. This is the one we put in last year, and this is the one that was put in back in the 1960s. This breaker right here feeds that panel right there. So that is acting as what they call a subpanel. And I can shut that subpanel down with that breaker. Now, that panel is supposed to go away and everything is supposed to be in here at some point. But the problem is the wires that feed from here to there are heavy and they're taking up way too much room in that conduit. So I'm going to pull them out and I'm going to run an external conduit between here and there, which will be temporary. But we have to do that in order to make this work. All right, it's time to shut down the sub panel. I'd like to tell you a story. So back in college, I had a professor who was an old Navy electrician back in World War II. And he told the story that they would go down and they would check their 480 volt three-phase panels down in the ship's electrical room with the back of their hand. And they would touch it like that, and if their hand snapped back, their arm snapped back, they knew the circuit was alive. Okay, don't do that. That's stupid. And fortunately, we don't do things like that anymore. But we do have these really nice devices. They are called non-contact voltage detectors. And they're wonderful because all you do is you turn them on and you get a green light. And when you put the probe up to an electrical circuit, if there's any power there, it's going to flash red and it might beep at you too. So let me just give you an example. So we know these are hot, right? So before you touch any electrical circuit, and I don't care how many volts it is, if it's 120 volts on your light socket, get one of these. It could save your life. So I'm going to come over here now, and I want to make sure that the leads coming in here are cold. Okay, that's cold. That's cold. The little beeps you're hearing, those are just stray pickups because we have voltage in the vicinity. But the actual circuit itself is stone cold. All right, now we're clear to work. Okay, there's the two phases, and did you guys hear that? That's an F-16 that just went supersonic overhead. There's a special part that we need for our HVAC system that you really can't find anywhere, around here at least in the south, and we had to go to Amazon to get it. Here it is. It's an emergency cutoff switch. The next part involves me going under the house. Unfortunately, I can't take you with me, so you're just going to have to use your imagination for a second. This is the conduit that I took out from under there. It is a liquid tight, which means waterproof, conduit that's flexible, and so I can use this outdoors with no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this cable out of here, and then we'll start putting things back together.
See it?
I do. Push it hard.
Okay.
It's not pushing. Okay. All right, let me see if I can just grab a hold of it.
Okay.
Pull on it. These are too big.
They're really tight in there too.
They are. We're taking up too much space. I'll pull this one.
Okay.
Is that one in?
That's it.
Okay. Ow, jeez.
Just cut your head open.
Probably.
A little bit, yeah. Took a chunk out.
Can you keep it away from the metal so it doesn't?
Barely. You're going so fast.
Okay, I got one more.
Yep, that's it.
All right.
Right behind you. Got it? Got it? That sure opens it up a lot more. That's nice. All right. What's the next step?
Okay, I removed the knockout. This is the conduit that I removed from inside of the house, and this should fit, and it does. So that's great. I'll go ahead and fasten that down now. Come to think of it, I have a better idea. These wires are pretty stiff, and they go where you want them to go, but reluctantly. So what I'm going to do is feed them through that hole first, then I'll feed them through the conduit, and then put the whole thing together as an assembly. So we'll do like this. I feel like I'm hitching up a team here. I think I just stepped on an ant nest. So what I'm doing here is trying to straighten them out, because if I try to put them through the conduit, when they're crossed over, then they'll bind up and they won't go through. It's time for a quick update here. So I managed to get the conduit mounted here, and we got the cables run through. Now, these cables were really difficult to get through this conduit. The first time we ran them through, they were brand new, hadn't been kinked at all, and they just slid right in with no problem. This time we had to lubricate them and get them kind of gooped up a little bit so that they would slide through. We got that done. Now, it will work. It's a little bit long, but I don't care because it's temporary. And there's supposed to be a fitting on here that goes through the box. We didn't have one, so I had to go to the Ace Hardware store, which is the only thing we have in town here for that kind of thing. They happen to have just one left. All right, I need to knock out another hole in this panel. All right, there we go. I have a special pair of wire cutters, that can cut right through this, and unfortunately I can't find them anywhere, so I'm resorting to the old trick of the hacksaw. That piece of white tape on there is to indicate that that is the neutral. And the neutral goes right up here to the neutral bus. This is like trying to wrestle a snake, a very large snake. We're really hustling because the sun is about to come around the corner here, and we'd like to be done and out of here before it shows up. These have to go all the way up to here.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we get them marked
Okay, that sounds good.
so that we don't confuse them.
Right. Yeah, one is yellow. Actually, I think the yellow was for something else. I'm not sure why I put that on there, but the red one's really the one that matters.
Well, yeah, I just noticed there's a yellow on this one and a red on this one. So this is the red.
Okay. Good catch.
Yes, I'm glad you said something. I was like, I looked right there, but the other end is red. So I'm just gonna cover it up like that.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's customary to put a red tape on one side when you have two phases, and that it doesn't matter which one is which. But what it does do is it tells you that this wire is the same as that wire over there that has a red tape on it. So I'll run one of these up here, and I'll run the other up the other side and hook those back in there, and then we can turn this thing back on. All right, I got my wires cut, stripped, and put into the lugs. Now I'm just going to go ahead and tighten these down really good. I'll just kind of hand tight this first. Then I'll come over and hand tight this one. All right, now I can let go. Now the final piece here is I need to put some torque on it. There's just a point where it just feels like it's there, and I don't want to go any further than that. All right, that's good. So this is all done. Let's take everything out of here that doesn't need to be there. The wasp nest we already dispatched, and that's gone. So let me just give it one quick look over. I did find a nicked insulation here, so I went ahead and taped that up. Okay, I think everything is good to go here. I'm going to go ahead and put the cover on it. And this thing is ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and throw the breaker back on. Pause for a moment. I'm listening for anything weird. I'm listening for sounds that shouldn't be there. The breaker didn't snap off, so that's a good sign. All right, I think we're done. Well, it looks like this episode was a little longer than most, but I'm proud of what we got done. I didn't really want to do this job here, but it needed to be done so that we can succeed moving forward. It just wasn't very pleasant crawling under the house to do all that stuff.
No, but it was necessary.
It was necessary. Well, it is hot out here. Yeah, the
Yes.
sun's coming around the corner, so let's say we get out of here and have some lunch.
Sounds good. Thank you for watching 1834 Restoration House.